So I'll call the meeting for January 21st, 1921 to order. And our first,
No, I'm in. I'm in.
you're in?
Hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we hear you.
So our first 2021 board, we're doing nominations. So the first position is nomination for chair for this year of 2021. So do I have any nominees for chair for Board of Commissioners for District 8?
Yes, Gloria Sabertis for chair. I nominate.
Do we have a second? Or do we have any other nominees?
I'll second.
No other nominees.
Okay. So everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, anybody nay? Nope. Okay, so 3
Thank you,
ayes.
Gloria.
You're welcome. So we need a nominee for vice chair. Okay, I would like to nominate Doug Kilpatrick.
Well, there you go. We're done. Yeah.
Do we have any in the other nominees?
Yeah, I was thinking I would nominate Pam Long, but
No. Oh. Pam Long has a lot to learn yet.
Okay,
I'm
Are you
okay with that.
thinking out loud, Doug?
Yeah, sort of thinking out loud. But,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so do we have a second for the nominee of Doug Kilpatrick for vice chair?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any noes? No. So Doug, congratulations, you're vice chair. Now we need a labor rep. So
So
Heidi,
explain that to
we
me.
have one or two, and I'm not sure exactly what the labor.
Usually just one.
Okay. Can you explain what that is? Because I've never done that position, so I don't know what it entails.
Maybe Chief Van Camp can explain it better.
It's the board rep to our labor management committee. One board member, myself and Brandon are on the management side. And then Chris Ross, who's the local president, and Brent are the union side. And we've been also having Derek sit in as well, like he did in the negotiation. So it's 3 for management, 3 for labor.
Okay.
Hmm.
So do we have any nominees? Pam, would you like to? Pretty easy.
It might be a learning experience.
Okay. So I nominate Pam for the position.
I hope you do get the opportunity for some learning on that one. I was the representative for 2020 for the board, and we had exactly 0 meetings that got scheduled. I mean, there was a couple of issues and we tried, but we got COVIDed, I think.
Okay. Okay. So I nominated Pam. Does somebody want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have our Board of Commissioners all done and taken care of in the rep. Now we have our oath of office, our swearing in of incoming Daniel Bevins to our board. He is replacing
Rich Gleckler.
Rich Gleckler. Thank you. It just sort of went out of my head.
No worries.
And we'll finish the term for Rich Gleckler for the term of 2021. So Heidi, I'll let you take that over.
All right. So Daniel, I'm going to just tell you what you need to say. And if you would just repeat it after me. I, Daniel Bivens,
I, Daniel Bivens,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform
and discharge the duties of the office
and
of
and discharge the duties of the office of
Fire Protection District Number 8,
Fire Protection District Number 8,
Fire Commissioner, position number 5,
Fire Commissioner, position number 5,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Okay,
Okay.
and then I'll just have you swing by sometime this week and you can sign this oath of office and you're good to go.
Okay. I thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Well,
Daniel.
Welcome,
Thank-
welcome to
Yeah,
the
we're
team.
glad to have you.
And then how soon will I have to volunteer for other things?
Next meeting.
I
When our
think,
COVID restrictions are up.
yeah, well, I see standing on the same edge as Pam is right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so our next agenda is the project presentation by, discussion by Van Camp and Hatton. So we'll take it over.
Well, thank you, new Madam Chair.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Just to go back in a little bit of history, over the past, actually a couple of years now, we've had reoccurring problems with the septic system at Station 81. The building was designed in 93 and 94, built in 96. At that time, we had no resident firefighters at all. So, well, actually we had one and it was me, but other than that, we had none living in the fire station. So the building was designed with a system that was sized for what we thought was going to be a reasonable occupancy load. Well, over time, use of the building has increased and the system became undersized by virtue of having more people. So what we did about a year and a half ago, or maybe even longer, I don't know, Steve, you might have to add in, but we asked Godat Pannier to come in and take a look at the current condition, promote or propose what a appropriate corrective action would be for the system, and put together plans and specifications for submittal for a permit from the county. And the board gave me authority at that time to go that far. So now we have a permit. We have bid ready construction documents and are ready to move ahead. The idea being that if we could advertise bids fairly soon, we might be able to benefit from a lower construction season at this point and work with a contractor for hopefully a lower project cost than we might have if we delayed the bidding. So pretty much that's the history. Other than that, I think maybe Steve can explain what the project is and certainly answer any question that you all might have about the project. So Steve, can you kind of explain what the problem was and how we chose to fix it, basically?
Yeah, I sure can. You hit the highlights. We'll dive down just one layer deeper maybe, but yeah, we got started on this actually almost not quite a year ago, trying to flesh out some of the details of it. But as Chief Van Camp reported back in 95, 6, 4, this system was designed to accommodate a couple of firefighters and a couple of admin staff in a big public meeting, totaling with some factor of safety about 400 gallons a day. Current use, Derek tracked that for a couple of months, December and January of last year, well, a year ago now. Anyway, and using the same design approach and the measured flows and people in attendance, that number would have been 900 gallons a day today. So that, in real shorthand, explains why the alarm's been going off on the septic system at 81 periodically. The system catches up. It's larger events and weekly meetings on top of firefighters for 7 days. Only when those weekly meetings sort of grow to a specific level do the alarms go off. And then when the big meeting comes, we get 100 or more people once or twice a year, then the alarms go off, and the system can catch up over a period of time, but it's not operating correctly, and rather annoying. In 2010, the system failed. The mound across the wetlands actually sealed itself up, got overloaded too often, and you had to replace it. It had been in operation for 15 years, which, mounds aren't great. So even 15 years is not unheard of, but it's a bit disappointing. You should be able to get better than that out of a mound. So clearly the system's been getting really more water than it was originally intended for. The straight interpretation of the code and the flows that were measured during the end of 19, beginning of 20, would have you basically double the size of the mound. That's a very confined area and kind of challenging. We worked with the county health department and developed a system that would sort of meet in the middle. I personally think, in my engineering judgment, a 600 gallon a day system is appropriate, 50% more capacity than you have now. And during that one big crab feed or Christmas bazaar or some event of a major nature, the system has some excess storage that will keep it working without overloading that mound system. And so that's the design that has been permitted, that's ready to go get built, and something that I believe the chief had sent you my opinion of cost. So it's not inexpensive, 55, 60K, something like that. It'll get you a 600 gallon a day system that's going to be good for 20 years or more. And I know you have different plans for the station, but if anyone were to occupy that station or that building, do whatever they wanted, they still have a 600 gallon a day system, and that's valuable to have. So that's kind of the background of why we did what we did, and what you're going to get out of the deal should you decide to go build it. We're suggesting that in the not too distant future would be the right time to put it out to bid. You get a couple 3 weeks to bid it, a couple 3 weeks to vet the contractors and get the paperwork going, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks to get it on the street. So we're talking 3-4 months before somebody's actually on the ground moving dirt. And that's appropriate. That puts us in the April timeframe. The weather's a little better and the tide's going out, so it's not so bad to build a system. But by starting early, the contractors are still looking for jobs, and so the pricing does get a little bit better at this time of year. We give them a little extra time to build it, so we're not in a big rush and they can fit it in, but they start building their summer, spring workload and get you guys locked in early. So that's the thinking. If we put this out to bid in June, everyone's running around with their hair on fire trying to get things built, and nobody necessarily needs the work, and you'll end up paying for it, I'm afraid. But that's the thinking.
Does anybody have any questions for Steve regarding that?
Steve, just a curiosity, how was the county to work with on the permitting process? Did they have any special concerns that you had to address? Just curious.
They did at first. First of all, they got COVIDed as well. I think the health department in particular was out doing contact tracing, and what normally takes a month or two took 6 to get worked through it all. But But the sanitarian who led the charge, he recognized that the strict application of their policies would result in a system that was just far and away bigger than what you need. And so he was pretty good to work with, and he talked to his boss and they figured out a way they could read their own code that would make it a little more rational. So we ended up at a good solution. I had suggested 600 gallons a day, and they accepted that, but then wanted a little extra tankage to provide that more buffer storage area, and that was a reasonable approach. And didn't really add a ton of money to the overall budget.
In your experience in projects of this nature, if there have been surprises or problems that have occurred, what's the source of those, and how have you managed them?
Well, it's sort of apples and oranges, but the biggest challenge we get, your system is a mound, and there are about 2 worse conditions and many better conditions. So in the scale of 1 to 10, your system for difficulty and size and cost is about a 7. When you start to move into the 8s and 9s and 10s, you usually end up with proprietary gear, and the cost gets crazy, and the challenges double. What you've got is a large system, but it's all normal parts, sand and grass and pipes and gravel. In your particular instance, I'd say the biggest risk is that the tanks that sit outside the apparatus bay in the ground in a very narrow spot between the concrete and the asphalt, those, well, one of them has to come out and a bigger one put in, and then another one has to go in. So the risk there is, what do we find under the ground that we didn't know was there? It's straightforward in a bid process to say, look, there's 2 tanks there, you need to pop one out, stick one additional one in, replace one, and provided that everything underground looks like what we think it looks like, then the cost is baked into the cake. But should they run into some irrigation piping or a stray stormwater pipe or water or something, then you may get an extra for having to deal with that nobody knew was there. So that's kind of where the challenges come in.
Okay, thank you.
In developing the budget, what kind of a contingency value then do you put in there to address those surprises underground?
Yeah, in the so in my budget, I've got 47K to just build the system, and then I've got the sales tax at 8% and a 10% contingency on top of that. So I guess that's the answer to your question. There's really 5K, more or less, about 10% of the installation cost in a contingency.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any more questions?
I know that there's a lot of wetlands back there, and as part of bidding this out, we would be stipulating that they're going to protect that and not disturb what they don't have to disturb.
Correct. And we were able to, so in the 2 tanks you have in front of the station, there's a pump in one of them, and it pumps through a pipe across the wetland over to the existing mound. And we were able to use that pipe for, it's a slightly bigger pump, but basically just repurpose that and not disturb the wetland any more than it is. And then, yeah, the wetland buffer I think it's a 50-foot buffer out there, and we have to be 100 feet from the water. So we maintain the buffer, we stay away from the wetlands, and basically build this pretty much on top of the existing mound. It's a little bigger, so it's kind of cocked sideways a bit. The station will be down for sewage for, my sources tell me, about a week as they kind of put this together. So there'll be some challenges operationally for the station, but could be a lot worse, I guess.
How would we manage that? We can get porta potties. What about portable showers? What's the plan for that?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do, is end up more of a field type of an event, so that we're not creating any drain water. So probably look at maybe showering elsewhere. Certainly we'll have toilets and so forth, and water. Again, it's just going to be some of the coordination that we'll have to do with contractor when that time comes, make sure that everybody's aware of the temporary accommodations and everything. That's something we've talked about. So.
Are costs for that incorporated in the budget?
No, I think that, well, I don't think so. Are they, Steve, for rental?
Nothing that the district would have to do. The contractor will have his own stuff, and he'll have to, we envision what steps he'll have to take, but I don't have him bringing in your Santa cans or making arrangements like that.
Just to clarify, the contractor will bring those in, or the department has to bring those in?
The department will have to take care of the station. The contractor will bring his own for his crew.
Sure, got it. Okay.
Yep.
I see, at least our experience has been running those things is for a week period or something like that would be less than $1,000. So.
Are there any more discussion on this? And what's our next step, Chief? Do we need to vote on this, or do we need to?
I would need board approval to move ahead. Again, I had received board approval to get this far, so this is the next step.
Okay. Well, just for my view, it's a necessary thing. The system's failing, and I think, it's expense that we have to do, but it's something that needs to be done. So I am looking to say, does anybody have any other discussion on this, or does somebody want to make a motion to vote on this?
I'll make a motion that we move forward to approve this work that needs to be done on the septic system.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay, so approved 5-0.
Excellent. I appreciate that. We'll keep you apprised of our progress on it. Brent's working with Steve on putting the contract documents, public works contract documents together, and we'll be preparing an advertisement and then advertising here as quickly as we can. So,
Okay, good
Thank
job. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Next agenda is the Chief's report.
Yes, I cranked it out Friday, and I hope that you all had an opportunity to review it and would be glad to answer any questions that you might have. I know that Milt contacted me with a couple of questions and had a couple of minor corrections on it.
Does anybody have any questions?
No questions, but I enjoyed reading it.
Oh my God.
I'm crazy.
as an aside to that, and something that I was hoping to include with the report but wasn't able to complete it, was a some information regarding our volunteer attrition. And I sent that chart out earlier today. And I was frankly pleased a bit that it didn't plummet like I had felt that it might. We seem to be holding our own fairly well. Thank you to our operations team, and then the everybody working on the shifts. We had obviously we had a much lower intake of new members, but we also had a smaller degree of leaving. So the chart kind of explains all of that. So we are holding with an average of 60 volunteers, and our attrition rate for 2020 was at 20%, which is actually up from last year, but still is a bit lower than our average. So
So why do you think the percentage is lower at the Boston Harbor station?
pardon?
Why do you think the average is so much lower at the Boston Harbor for volunteers?
Before we merged.
Percentage-wise.
It was well, it was a smaller department, and they were having challenges, and a number of those challenges was the reason why we merged with them. So they had a fairly high turnover rate, and they were facing the same problem that everyone else was, just that they were a bit smaller than we were. And
Yeah, that district, it was not large enough to have a robust training program. So I think we lost a lot of members due to that.
Okay. That explains it.
Chief, as I looked at the staffing report that you'd sent out, but then also the list of names in your report for the month, I actually had a more alarmist kind of response to it. As I look through it, when the current roster, when I take out the receptionists and chaplain and operation support and people who are on leave and so forth, I ended up with and also that there's one who doesn't say what they are, and then I think three who are listed as recruits. So people who are firefighter, EMT or above, we have 44, and which works out to less than 5 per shift. And given the impacts that we've had on our recruiting and academy process, and the reduction in the size of the pipeline that we have coming in, I'm quite concerned about our ability, if we have our regular expected attrition rate, our ability to provide adequate service out of 2 stations. I mean, we're already not even meeting 90%, and we've been seeing that percentage of service go down. And it looks to me like the writing's on the wall, that it's only going to get worse over the course of this year. And I'm given that that's our #1 priority, I'm extremely concerned about that. And I think we should be taking some action. Not sure what that is, but I think we should be taking some action to address that.
well, I'm not suggesting we're sitting on any laurels with that report, and acknowledge that a number of people that are gone the first quarter wouldn't have shown on that report. They were still here the fourth quarter of 2020. So acknowledge that. But yeah, and this is part of the thing you and I have been talking about, is what kind of staffing do we generate and even more importantly, creating retention. Right now, I think we've buttressed up in our last go around, we buttressed up our cross-trained people, firefighter EMTs, which really do help with staffing. We still have a problem with driver operator, and we still have a problem with volunteer officers. So again, I guess I'm not as terribly concerned about the firefighter EMT ranks as much as making sure we have adequate numbers of driver operators and ultimately officers as well, volunteer officers, volunteer driver operators. So that has been and continues to be our number one priority that we're working on. We have an inflow right now, about 4 or 5 candidates that are coming in for the process. We will have a recruit academy, and we're working very hard to make sure that we do have an EMT class for the spring session so that we can send our folks off to training and hopefully get somewhat back to staffing or input staffing as normal as it can be with the COVID situation.
But that would, if we have 4 or 5, that's going to be about half of what we've typically had in recent memory.
Half of, well, for one session, yeah.
Right.
So Chief, can I ask, when you say driver operator, can they drive the aid car and not have the driver operator certification? Is the driver operator only for the engines, or is it for all the vehicles?
We have a certification process that covers smaller vehicles like the ambulance or utility-sized vehicles. That's considerably less rigorous than for pumpers and tenders, which require more training, especially a pumper, because we require them to have training on how to run a pump, which is an art in itself. So our EMTs can drive the ambulance with far less preparation than would be necessary for somebody doing a pumper or a tender.
So if we get, tight on driver operators, then our alternative then would be to have the officer switch and have just aid cars going out instead of engines going out.
Well, that's primarily what's happening at 83 right now. If you look at our report, we had our staffing of the engine company at 83 was considerably lower than it has been for that reason. And most of the time that a crew is over there at 83 is to staff the aid car over there.
Okay.
So it's a shortage of numbers, but more so it's probably a shortage of specific skill levels that we need. And maybe Brandon can add more about that. Do you have anything to add to that, Brandon?
I would just clarify to answer Gloria's question more specifically, is that our measurable objective is the number of engine qualified. But you're right, we generally have 2 to 3 times as many aid unit drivers available at any given time. But in order to ramp up and actually have that capability of having 2 stations staffed with engines, we need to make sure we have, of course, 2 drivers of the engine. So you don't see our measurable format. We have it, but we generally don't share it with, you can have it if you want, but I don't think it's going to help you to know how many aid unit drivers we really have.
Right.
What we're finding is the most effective measurable output is how many engine drivers we have. So it kind of goes back to what you're saying. So yes, there are different layers. However, the one you're seeing is specific to the engine driver qualifications.
Okay. Well, I was just saying that if you have an overflow of staff at 81 and you're not putting people at 83 because they're not an engine driver, but they could drive an aid car. I don't know how many aid cars are at rigs are at 83, but I mean, if you needed to not have an overflow at 81 and move them to that, it's just a suggestion.
That's what happens most of the time. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
We just wished we had a second engine more often than we do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Refresh my memory. Do we need to approve the monthly report?
No.
No,
I just answer if there's any questions or not.
Okay.
Brandon,
Is there any
you
more?
wanted to give a quick report on the status of filling our bargaining unit vacancy?
Sure. And also we'll say hi to Mike Six right there, one of our applicants. Hi, Mike. Welcome. Glad you could make it to our board meeting.
Hi, guys.
So yeah, we did get our battalion chief position closed out yesterday. We received 7 applicants, and we, like I said, we just closed them out yesterday. Processing through with them today. I did get a chance to meet with our collective bargaining or our union president to kind of go over some of the review on it. We had a chance to let our training officer give a qualification review. There was a couple things that popped up, a couple questions. So we're letting that process out. And then hopefully with any luck here, well, my hope is tomorrow, but definitely this week, we'll be reaching out and advising all 7 of the applicants what the next step is. And we're looking at having 4 move forward to do our process. So we'll have to inform 3 of a thank you, but no thank you, and 4 of a thank you.
So what are your steps to that process? I mean,
Sure. So as I mentioned yesterday, the application closed out. So we have the applicants in, the position is closed out, the vacancy, the appointment is, or the announcement is closed out. And then, so this week we have to reach out to the candidates, advise them, and mostly Public Safety Testing is our company that's doing the third-party testing. So we advise them, and essentially it puts into public safety's hands, and then they schedule, they coordinate it. And on the 25th and the 27th, so the last week, so here in 2 weeks, actually, the 25th and 27th are the 2 days for interviews and the testing process. So that should be done. So the 27th is the last day of the testing process, and then it'll probably take another few days after the 27th. So into the 28th, 29th for public safety to get the results, report back to Chief and I on how the status of all the assessment centers work. And at which point Chief and I can do a chief's interview for the top candidates, and we can make offers for membership and have that a roster of how everybody did and move forward. And then they move forward with background checks, CPAT, medical, and a whole slew of all the next steps and sequences. So if timing's doing well, we're hopeful that we might get somebody starting in April.
okay, very good.
March would be nice, but April's more realistic.
And remind me again what, because it doesn't say on here what we're filling, what position we're filling.
Battalion chief.
Let me see.
This is a new battalion chief position we've added.
Okay,
Added one. Okay.
okay.
Somebody already filled Damian Longmire's position for battalion chief?
Damien was one of our volunteers who resigned, yes. And that, of course, made more openings for coverage, or more holes for coverage, I should say.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions for Brandon or I on the monthly report? Okay, thank you.
So our next is the 2021 general fund expense budget, and Chief is asking for approval of that. So does anybody have any questions on the expense budget?
I did send out, per your request from the last meeting, a budget with some adjustments for proposed reductions, and that's what the document that I sent out last week reflects. So basically, it's a list totaling $102,000 worth of proposed reductions.
Okay.
And would be glad to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Opening it up here. I did want to say thanks, Chief, for following that direction and sort of looking for those near misses, if you will. And I think this is a good scrub of what we had, and did address those kinds of things that I was thinking about.
Yeah, and I will echo that too. I really, really appreciate the effort. I think documenting it is really helpful for us going forward, so that we can have a story to tell to the public when it's appropriate. I did have, Chief, I'd sent you a question about the items that were marked in red, because I hadn't really understood those, but based on your response back, I'm understanding that you're not budgeting for an increase for yourself for this year in this version. Is that correct?
That's what I understood the message was from the board in the last go around.
All right. Well, maybe we should talk about that, because my understanding of where we were at was that based on where your compensation was at in the summertime when we were doing your evaluation, when we looked at comparables, things looked reasonable to us, but I don't think that was making a judgment for the future. So I think at some point it's appropriate for us to, as part of the assessment process, which we'll be talking about later, review comparables. And so in my mind, that's a judgment that we make every year where that's at. So, and I don't think we were making that judgment for the future last year.
Okay.
I agree.
When you did your salary, did you include, because I know we did approve your cost of living increase, so you do have your cost of living increase in this budget, correct?
Well, the COLA adjustment for non-bargaining unit employees is automatic as per our policy.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this year, the cost of living index was 0.9%. So non-bargaining unit full-time employees, which were the three of us, Heidi, myself, and Brandon, received the 0.9% COLA adjustment.
Okay. Okay, so are there any other questions on the budget here?
Well, to follow up on what I was bringing up, I'm not sure what the board would want to do, but one approach that I might suggest is that we return that money. I think it's just shy of 12,000 to the budget, with an understanding that we don't want to spend that money on anything else, but at some appropriate time, if it makes sense, through the assessment process to evaluate comparables and make a decision at that time. I think we should have funds set aside for that if it's appropriate.
I agree with you. I think that would be a smart thing to do.
Mhm.
Okay, so I guess what we can do now is we need to approve this. So does somebody want to make a motion to, or do we have any more discussion? Does anybody else want to discuss anything else on this? So I need somebody to make a motion that we approve the 2021 budget with revising the 11,223 back into the budget for future possible use of salary increases.
I'll second that.
I guess I made a proposal, didn't I? Okay, I guess I did the proposal and Doug seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank
For-
you.
Okay,
So that gives us an expense budget for 2021 then. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry, next thing, writing notes here. Okay, so process for performance evaluation for chief and secretary. So this is yours, Milt.
Okay. We talked some about this a year ago, but wanted to bring up that a couple of years ago, we had gone through, we had a committee of myself, Gloria, and the chief talking through the performance assessment process that we used. And we came up with a kind of a revamped design for that that was based on we seem to always, every year, we seem to be kind of like reinventing what we were doing, and it was hard to be productive with that. And we also were running into problems because the assessments were based on the employees' hire date rather than the calendar year, which all the planning and the budgeting is based on. And so we had a really hard time tying those processes together. So through the last year and a half or so, we've worked at realigning things. So now our performance assessment process and budgeting and planning are all calendar year. And so it's incumbent on us to be starting up a performance assessment process for the last half of last year now. A couple of other concepts that we agreed to, I think. One was that in evaluating the chief, we should first evaluate the district, and that ultimately it's the chief's job for the district to achieve its goals. So the first step in that process is to evaluate, well, how did we as a district do on our overall goals? And then secondly, to provide context to that, it's good for us as a board to do some self-evaluation and see how we performed as a group in support of the chief. And then to actually do the chief's assessment using the chief, I forget what the PDP, is that the appropriate acronym?
Yes, that's correct.
Using that form. And there's there's a annual life cycle of this whole process. By the time we're finished assessing his performance for last year, it's time to start planning for the next year. And you kind of do it in reverse order. So you kind of work your way up the hill and then you go back down the hill. So I just wanted to bring that up. And ultimately it's Glo, you as the chair, it's your job to make all that happen. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
One suggestion that I had was every year we have traditionally had a retreat in January or February timeframe. And it's possible to do those on Zoom, though it's not desirable to do them all day
Right.
in that format, but you could do a shorter retreat in Zoom.
Okay.
And I think that format or venue might be appropriate for us to spend some time reviewing our results as a district and our performance as a board, and then teeing up the more detailed process of working through the assessments for the chief and secretary.
One of the things I'd like to add to what Milt said was sort of the tiered approach that we have taken to the performance PDPs for each member in the district was to everything draws from what our goals and objectives are for the district. And the ultimate goal of the PDP is to, one, is share that information with each member and identify what their role in achieving those goals and objectives are, and then ultimately measure the achievement that both the supervisor and the member have agreed to. So I think it's a great way, I think, for everybody to understand what we're doing, what we're going, who we are, and keep everybody on the same sheet of music. We've, obviously with something that deep and as many people as we're dealing with, it's been pretty much of a challenge to get it off. But I think I've seen some positive feedback from it. People are understanding what the mission and vision of the department, what it means, and so forth. So actually, this is the first organization that I've ever been a part of that really embedded each member and understanding what each member's role in the organization was. And I really, my hat's off to Doug for discovering this thing. And I can't believe the state actually developed this thing, but it's perfect for us. And it's a lot of work, but I think the payoff ultimately will be very high. So the timing for all this would be good as we launch our PDP season. And I think it's good. And I think talking about all of this as soon as we can so that we can actually get stuff done rather than just talking about it will be very good. So.
Okay. So I guess, Heidi, I guess what we need is have you send out some dates to see what would be good. I'm off on Mondays and Wednesdays. So any one of those 2 days work. Otherwise we'd have to do an evening. So I don't know what consensus everybody has on doing that. And I'm thinking probably in the next couple of weeks would be, while it's fresh, try and get the meeting in here in January sometime.
You said Mondays or what? What was the other day?
Mondays and Wednesdays I'm off.
Okay.
There's only a couple Wednesdays or a couple Monday, one Monday I think I'm not off, but I'll have to let you know which one that is. Because I had to leave the room to a different room because my husband was doing some stuff on the
Yeah,
computer with stuff and it's making noise.
no worries.
Okay. So how do you guys all feel about trying to do something before the end of January?
Mondays work for me, or Friday, Monday or Friday, Wednesday. Yeah, just let me know and I'll schedule it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm generally flexible.
Okay.
I'll
We
look at
need
the
to
calendar and
give
throw
the
some
chief
dates out.
time to put together whatever documentation, wrapping things up for the year
Okay.
would be appropriate. I know he puts together a chart that looks at service levels by quadrant and so forth. And that's, I think, helpful to have.
Okay. Is that something you said you would put together or you want me to put together? Okay.
No,
Okay,
it's
so I may have to call you and figure out
No,
what
no,
it is that we have to put or,
Brian does that.
okay, Brian does that, so I don't have to do that. Okay. Okay, so we'll figure it out. Daniel, are you available any specific days or not?
Oh, Mondays and Wednesdays are usually pretty good for me.
Okay, so I think Heidi, those would be the best days to maybe
Okay.
look at. Does that work for you too, Doug?
Yeah, I can make it work.
Okay. I know you do have some calls on Mondays, don't you? What's a better time of day, the afternoon for you?
It kind of varies from week to week, so that's fine. I'll
Okay,
look at my schedule and move things if I have to.
okay. So once Heidi gets that all, then she'll send us all out a notice on once we all respond back to the dates that she selects, and then we'll go
But
from
we'll
there,
aim for
okay?
January.
Yeah, we're ready to do it before the end of January if we can.
Yep.
Okay. Chief, does that give us enough time to be able to get all the information together that we need for this?
I think so. I guess we're going to talk about the actual retreat
Okay.
more, or are we done?
Well, no, I guess that would be the next thing. We just needed sort of set deep, but now we need to discuss the retreat. So, and that's got Milt's name on it here for the discussion on that.
Yeah,
So I guess you really sort of talked about it, didn't you?
yeah, I was kind of combining topics.
Okay.
I mean, we should talk about maybe what's the point of it? What are we trying to achieve in it? But the two things I've got is reviewing our how do we do on our goals for 2020, kind of what's the state of the district kind of thing,
Okay.
which by policy the chief is supposed to be giving us that report, and doing some time self-assessing ourselves as a board, and then kind of looking at our plans for 2021, and are we where are we at as far as, have we set the stage well to achieve those plans? What can we as a board be doing to support the chief and Heidi and the department and doing the best we can?
Okay.
But to me, those are the things I'd want to talk about.
Okay, so one of the things that I was also thinking about is making sure, because I know we have one engine that we have ordered, but I think in part of this, we also need to talk about the apparatus and do we have all the appropriate apparatus for all the calls that we go on? So, you know, because I know we've had a couple water rescues, and so we need to look at, you know, are we going to have more of that in future? So we need to see, I guess what we should do, or in part of this, is have an assessment of how many calls and what type of calls have we gone on through the year, and do we have adequate equipment for those calls? Because that affects our response times and everything. And since we do have two, you know, boat areas that have, you know, rescue, we've had to have, what, 2 rescues already this winter within a week of each other, of boats going down and kayak getting flipped and all that. So, you know, we might need to discuss on, do we need to add something for water rescue in our department? So those are things that we might need to look at also when looking at all these reviews on not only goals and assessment, but, you know, apparatus needs to, I think, be in there to make sure we have appropriate apparatus.
Well, that is actually one of the goals that we have, is for our facilities and equipment team to look at our current CNR&R plan for the equipment that we have, and determine if that fleet, if you will,
Mhm.
is still appropriate or not. So that's already going on at an operational level.
Okay,
And as part of the goal that we have is for me to take that report back to you, the findings of it, and ultimately get the board approval for any changes that we may recommend to the CNR&R plan. So all of that's started and happening. I don't know if that will be complete at the time that we have our retreat, but that
Okay.
is one of the goals that we have for 2021.
okay, cool.
One of the things that I wanted to add was that in the past, when we've had our annual retreat, if you will, we've also incorporated some educational stuff. In the
Mhm.
past, we may have had SNR, or we had Dave Luxembourg or somebody. I think that just my perspective would be, as you know, our business becoming more and more complicated, it might not be a bad idea if we want to devote the time to have some of that training. For example, Dave could provide some labor management training like he has in the past. We've got a brand new board member. We've got a brand new labor rep, and we've got, you know, folks that may or may not deal with labor relations on a regular basis. So I tend to think that it's a big, important part of our life. It would probably be a good thing if we
Okay.
wanted to incorporate some of that. Also, perhaps have a legal briefing, again, for some of our newer members, about critical things that commissioners probably should know, and whether or not you find value in that or not. I know SNR has kind of reduced the number of training sessions he's doing. In fact, we just received a survey the other day about interest in a couple of them. So I would just recommend to you to consider including some educational agenda topics, if you will, and I would be glad to make sure, you know, arrange for it and have that available. But again, that's all up to all of you. So
I got a couple of comments on that. One, I agree wholeheartedly, including some educational time is really, really good. I would request, though, that given we tend to zoom out after, I mean, 2 hours is about as much as anybody can take. So I would suggest, if we are going to do some education, that we set it up as a separate session altogether.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's a
But
good idea. I feel
And I'd also encourage us, the topics, Chief, that you brought up, I think are good. But I also, sitting in on the WFCA Education Committee, they are talking about doing some of that material this spring already. And so I think should coordinate with their plans, just so we're not being duplicative.
I just offer that perspective.
I had a thought with regard to Gloria's suggestions, and I appreciate that we want to make sure that our department has the tools to respond and provide the services that we want them to respond. But I would be concerned about having the top of the organization, the executive portion of the organization, that being us at the commission level, directing what kind of equipment. So, as Chief mentioned, we do have a process where it's coming up from the bottom. The commission will get an opportunity to review. We can certainly always ask questions if those are things that are being considered. But yeah, I would definitely rely on our operations staff to make suggestions about what are the tools they need, because they are the ones that are going to use those tools.
correct. Yeah. That's not, that's sort of how I was seeing, but I just probably didn't say it right. Okay. Let me page back over. Okay, so I guess I got my work cut out for me, and I'll be probably contacting you, Chief, this next week to see what we need to do to get things going on these meetings. And so it looks like maybe we're going to need to set up 2 different meetings on, have two separate type of meetings. So we'll take and do that. So do we have any more discussion on these topics on the board retreat or?
I agree with the basic tenet that like 2 hours is sort of the attention span, bladder span that we could put forth. But you could have a meeting in the morning and then have a break for a couple hours and then have something in the afternoon.
Okay.
I think that might be workable. So,
Okay.
Just keeping that as open as a possibility of how we might structure it. And we still might need a couple of days, but that might be a way of trying to achieve and get the time in without killing off any of us.
Right. Well, plus it'll also depend on Dave Luxembourg, what his availability is also. And that, because I know he has a family and business and all that kind of thing. So once we check with him, we'll find
Yeah,
out.
Gloria, I can work with putting that together. I agree with Doug. If we can craft an agenda that fits around that in 2-hour blocks, I think that's a very smart thing to do.
Okay.
And maybe we have more than one day if we can't fit it in all into those little packages. So.
Okay. So I'll need to get with you to maybe discuss what we need to do for this, since I remember it, but I don't know it all off the top of my head on how to get it all presented and everything.
We can do that.
Okay. Okay, so then Heidi, do we have announcements?
You're on mute.
Heidi, you're on mute.
Sorry. I need to ask approval for the meeting minutes from our December 8th meeting.
Okay, so I need somebody to make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Move.
So
I'll
moved.
second.
Do you have okay, and we got a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any negative? Nope. Okay. Minutes approved.
Great. Next will be warrants. I did send those out and I had one board member ask me some questions about it, but if anybody has questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Do we have any questions on the warrants?
I had no questions.
No.
Heidi, just a follow-up question on the Springbrook Software.
Yeah.
And that used to be Bias. Has their price changed or do?
No, it actually surprisingly, I want to say it was a little bit lower. I think that Springbrook is a larger company
Mhm.
and it felt like with Bias every year it was going up and up and up, but the service wasn't improving. So I believe I double checked the price and I think it was a little bit lower, if not the same as what it was last year. They do offer a cloud program, and I haven't really researched that because I tried using the cloud program with Bias and it didn't really work well for us. We were always having problems with it. So I'm going to research that, but I believe the cost could be slightly more high, a little bit more with the cloud because I don't know why, but it is.
Have they
But anyway.
communicated what their plans are as far as, are they going to try to force migrate you into one of their existing products or change the support
No,
model?
the impression I got was that they are a large company and they're a big fish and they ate up the little fish, and they don't plan on changing our software that I know of unless it's to improve it. But they actually kept several of the employees, the main people that started Bias. They're employing them as advisors and I don't know what they're doing, but so it hasn't felt a whole lot different to me. My interaction with them when I need help, if I need help, has been the same, and it doesn't feel any different to me at all. They are having a online conference in February, so that will be a telling moment, and it's free, which is wonderful because I know every year Bias charges a significant amount to attend their annual conference, but this one is free, and so we'll see how that goes.
All right, let's hope that it all
Yeah.
works out well.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion?
I do have one question, if I may.
Mhm.
In the Northwest Water Systems, is that the bacterial testing, is that monthly or bi-monthly?
It's monthly, yeah,
Okay.
and we have to do it because we are a public agency and the public use our facilities.
Okay,
Many years ago, we used to do it ourselves and we would just test the water, mail it in, get the sample, record it. But the regulations indicate that we can't do that any longer. We have to have an agency do it for us. And it's expensive. It's a lot more money than it was when we did it ourselves.
yeah, I thought that was a little bit high for it, but nonetheless, it saves you, it saves the department labor hours too.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so we need to, if everybody's done, does anybody else have any other questions for Heidi? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the warrants. Okay.
I move to approve.
I'll
Do we have
second that.
Okay, we have approved, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it's approved.
Okay, the last thing that I have is, I shared this with the board at the last meeting, and that is the conferences and travel proposal.
Mhm.
In our policy, the board is supposed to approve travel and conferences for the board for the following year. The unfortunate thing is that because of the COVID pandemic, we ended up, most of the conferences from last year were canceled that had been previously approved. And conferences for 2021 have not yet been scheduled because they're all tentative. So at this point, I don't have any dates really to throw at you other than I believe Legislative Day. Actually, I don't know. I'm not prepared to answer that question, but I think it might be a Zoom meeting.
Okay. And do
Yeah,
they
it
charge?
probably is because the legislative session itself is primarily a Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
And do they charge for that, Heidi? For that Zoom
I'm sure
meeting?
they'll charge something.
Okay. Okay.
They usually do.
Well, they
Well, it-
do.
I haven't
but
gotten the
there's a-
information. I
there's
tried to
a-
get it and it wasn't available. So,
I mean, there's a, when they have it in person, there's a catered meal and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
this year there might be no charge at all,
right. Or
So-
very nominal.
right?
regarding the conferences, I mean, my recommendation would be once they start becoming a tangible thing to approve, we can bring that to the table and have the board review it. But right now I have absolutely nothing with a date or a cost or anything to provide to you as needing to be approved. So,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
I think that's fair.
Okay. So, do we have any commissioners conference or commissioners comments? Okay, well, I just want to say I'd like to welcome Daniel to our board and look forward to working with you and in the future. And we're here if you have any questions that since you're new and we've all been there the first time. So, if you have questions, do not hesitate to call. One reminder I want to share with everybody is that when you are responding to an email from the chief or Heidi concerning the board, we have to reply, not reply all, but reply by just individually, because that creates a public meeting and can get you in trouble. So just remember, when you're replying to any response from them, it has to be reply by itself, not reply all. Okay. Anything else? Any more comments?
Just along the lines of sort of welcome and thank you for taking the time to Mike Six. Thank you for taking the time to participate here, and good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
So we have review and follow-up.
We've gotten approval to move ahead on the sanitary septic system at 81. We'll be moving ahead with that and working, Brent will be working with Steve Hatton on finalizing the bid specifications, advertising, and then ultimately the bidding process. We continue to work, as Brandon said, on the hiring process for our battalion chief. And that's moving ahead as well. Keep you posted on that. We did adopt the 2021 budget, and so we'll begin putting that into our accounting system and move ahead with that. I will be working with Glow on the annual board retreat, and I guess if you need any help as far as the performance process and that, I'd be glad to work with you on that. And Milt's got quite a bit of background. I'm quite sure he would be willing to help on that as well. Frankly, that's all I have at this point.
Okay. Anybody else? Another? Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, so it looks like our meeting is adjourned, and we will adjourn into executive session to discuss labor